very exciting. This has been a very exciting project to work on. A wonderful opportunity to think about UConn puppetry and all the UConn alumni and all the amazing different things they're doing. It's been quite wonderful. I'm John Bell, the director of the Ballard Institute and Museum of Puppetry. Here with my colleague Matt Sorensen, the visiting assistant professor in residence at the Puppet Arts program. The illustrious and semi-legendary Bart Ruckelberg. And my colleagues are both alumni of the Puppet Arts program. Yay. We wanted to thank Emily Wicks, who is like at work right now. Manager of operations and collections, making everything you see here possible. It's been a pleasure to work with Matt and Emily on this exhibit, since they're both so inventive and dedicated and good-spirited. So I'm very lucky to be part of that triad. I mean, it's three people working together. So, yeah. The dedicated installation team has included Sadie Aiken, Puppet Arts student who edited the videos you're looking at. Sadie. From Texas, which is important in some ways. And then Harley Walker. Harley Walker, I think, is not here right now. But they're from LA now, but they were from Tennessee. And Alfie Free, who's from Stafford. Nope. No. Tolland, Stafford, Tolland. And also Sarah Cripsey, Caitlin LaRose, who's out front maybe at the front desk. Jerry Harney, Puppet Arts student, and maybe others I forgot. And also helping install was our Ballard Institute Advisory Board member, Adrian Marks, over here. Thank you, Adrian. And as that might suggest, our work here is supported by an actively engaged advisory board and collections committee and a programming committee and a fundraising committee, and some of those folks are here right now, so we really appreciate their support. And we also get the support of our Dramatic Arts Department Chair, Megan Rivas, who's very pro-puppet, and our Dean, Deanna Fitzgerald. So this exhibition is up through the end of October, so we hope you'll tell people about it. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that our programming will continue this summer with outdoor puppet shows in the town square in July. It's not totally figured out when those are going to happen, but we hope you'll come to them. There's a guest book in the front we hope you might sign. And what my colleagues and I want to do is to give you a tour through this exhibit, which is divided, as per my colleague Matt's brilliance, into what does that say? Innovation and performance and fabrication and education. And it's been really exciting to think about UConn puppetry and the different people involved, like Janabeth Johnson, who is a real pioneer in overhead projector work, which is now sort of like the main technique used for shadow puppet performances, and with groups like Manual Cinema. And Janabeth was really involved with that work with Frank Ballard. But she wrote, in a very interesting paper she wrote about the history of the Puppet Arts program, that the puppetry is a fascinating world of art and movement and imagination, where puppetry, as Frank Ballard wanted to do when he started the Puppet Arts program in 1965, which was 60 years ago, puppetry practiced not simply as low culture folk art and children's entertainment, but as an evolving form of modern performing art. The idea and ideal of each Puppet Arts production, Janabeth wrote, I think it was in the late 70s, was to expose the public to good high quality puppetry, to teach the art and technique of puppetry production to a student cast and crew, and by showing both audience and cast the degree of excellence that can be achieved in puppetry, to set new higher standards for for the art of puppetry in America. So with this conscious project, which actually Frank Ballard embodied from his time in the 1930s in Alton, Illinois, making puppet shows, you know, to uplift the art of puppetry and let other people know about it, which is what this exhibit is all about. So I think we're going to start with me kind of zipping the lip, and Matt is going to lead us through starting with Bart.
I'm curious, besides myself, are there other students of Frank Ballard's here? Stephen and students of Frank Ballard. Susan told us, way back there. Okay,
Jolene.
And Jolene. Oh, we're done, shall we do it? All right. So, as John has pointed out, Frank founded this program in 1965. It was at a time when the graduate school at the university was looking for new topics to offer. It happened that just before 65, a man named Mel Helstein from UCLA had done his sabbatical leave at the Performing Arts Academy in Prague, known as DAMU. And he came back, Mel came back, and DAMU had a puppetry program, and Mel came back and started an MFA program in puppetry at UCLA, which ran up through the early 1990s when Mel retired and the program collapsed. Frank, a friend of Mel's, said, well, the graduate school wants something new, and Frank had been a lifelong puppeteer, had taught puppet classes before establishing the degree, offered to create the puppetry program. Thankfully, at that time, Frank's department head was on sabbatical leave because the man hated puppets. If he had been in place, we wouldn't be here right now, okay? So timing was everything. Frank proposed the project, and the MFA degree was established. It was a couple of years later where the BFA and the MA degrees were established. Frank, in his time leading the program, mounted major productions, operettas, operas that were performed in the Jorgensen Theater. Yes, Josephine here is from HMS Pinafore. Okay, and he tried to work with as many different types of puppets in each production as possible so that we, the students, would get experience with different materials and different ways of performing. When Frank retired in 1989, the program was closed, and letters poured in from around the world to the dean, to the president of the university, to the governor of the state, saying, you don't realize what you have. Thankfully, there was a dean in place in the School of Fine Arts, Dick Thornton, who said, okay, well, maybe we should try again. And it was in 1990 where I was hired to come in and take over the program, with the idea that we had saved it. We kept the puppetry program going. Before that, anytime there was a budget cut, puppetry was the first thing on the chopping block. Okay? But then they'd look and they'd say, well, we're getting all this international publicity and it's not costing us anything. Well, keep going, Frank. Okay? But when Frank retired, they said, okay, now's our chance. Well, we reestablished. Dick basically hired me to come in, and I thought that we were, and yes, the publicity shot just before my teaching started. And we got underway. But it was at the end of that first year where I got a letter from the provost saying, why should I defend you to the state legislature? I thought we solved this. So I did some interviews with former with alumni from the program. What are you doing? Why is your work important to the university? And we had lists of things like people working with Barbara Bush's reading literacy program, working for industry, doing entertainment on Broadway. And I put that list together and got a letter back from the provost that said, you know, we get more bang for the buck out of your program than any other. Keep going. We're still here. And as time has gone on, the administration of the university has changed, as well as in the Department of Dramatic Arts. As John mentioned, our department head, Megan Rivas, is a major supporter of our work, pushing us in ways that we don't even think of, which is quite exciting. Our new dean also is very supportive, Dean Fitzgerald. And so we feel like we're in a good place. And of course, the provost of the university is the former dean of the School of Fine Arts, who also supports us. So in terms of administrative support, we're doing great. And we've grown. You know, Frank was a one-man band. I was by myself for 15, 17 years. And as time has gone on, Dr. Bell came into the museum, and we were able to get him to teach. And since then, Matthew Cohen is also teaching in our program. And now Matthew Sorensen is part of the program. So we've gone from one-man band to a quartet.
Yay.
And, the mix of ideas that are happening between us and with the variety of students that we have in the program is really remarkable. There's one thing I do love pointing out, and I proclaim this even in this age of political weirdness. There have been more than 30 countries represented in our program, students and guest artists, and they are still working with us. From Taiwan, Thailand, China, to Europe, I mean, around the world we have alumni. And it's a very, very rich situation. And it'd be nice to be able to teach our government that this mixture, this melting pot of the United States is actually the good thing. It's what we should be. So I'm very, very proud of our mix. See Amy over there smiling, and Tom Tuch from New Zealand is here. Who else am I leaving out at this moment? Venezuela. Anatar from Venezuela. Ali Edesamafar, I don't see here, but from Iran, currently our students. And we have another student coming from South Korea next year, and another Iranian coming in. So we're a good mix. Matthew, what would you like me to say further?
Mention Ina too.
Yes. Ina Ramelet is from the Philippines. She's home right now, hoping that her visa stands for her to come back in the fall.
We'll put a little good energy in the air about that.
I think we're heading
We're
this
gonna,
way.
yeah. So I think it makes sense for you, Bart, to kind of talk about the way Frank worked with students and how this production and many of those other productions came to be. This work here, and I was thinking you could handle talking about Jan and also Brad because you knew them both.
Okay, sure. Well, Josephine here from HMS Pinafore is a great example of Frank Ballard's work. Frank was a marionettist first and foremost. As he taught us how to use puppetry, we learned to work with the marionettes. Sue, were you in HMS Pinafore?
Yes, and I performed Josephine.
Oh. Can I bring you over here to talk about her? What was your experience working with Josephine?
Well, I'll have to tell my story.
Yeah, please.
You know my story?
Yes.
The one I want to tell? Okay, so this is the best story. This is the best puppet arts and Frank Ballard story ever. So I was working on Josephine. Are these shortened, these strings, from what the original performance
I'm
was?
sure they
Because
are.
they were like
Yeah, you were
12
feet
feet
long.
strings. We had to climb way up this bridge, and so I was a sophomore in college. I was really young, and I was given this sort of leading role to play. Now, it was all soundtracked by professional singers and actors, so I was just moving her to the thing. And she was blocked to walk across the stage. This is like, I'm gonna have to act this out. So she was blocked to walk across the stage, fall on a chaise, and go, like that. And I went in every night before because I was practicing. I'm up there practicing, and she always looked like terrible. It was terrible. And I was really struggling, and I was like, oh, Professor Ballard, what, I just can't do it. She doesn't look well. And he was ailing at the time from his Parkinson's, and it was starting to get quite pronounced, and that was sort of before they had good medications and everything. And so he was pretty shaky, and he decided he was going to go up on the bridge to show me how it's done. So we, of course, are all, you know, this man, frail, and the bridge, the ladder is vertical. It's not, you know, it's climbing up this vertical ladder, and we're all, you know, making sure he's okay. And he got up there, and he's holding Josephine. Now, up top, this is what this looked like, right? Because he had the Parkinson's, and he was playing around with strings, and he was getting ready. And we're all watching. I'm going, oh, what's this going to show me? But then if you looked down at Josephine, she went, hi, baby. As beautiful, it was like there was something magic that happened from here to down here. And that's my best puppet story ever.
I just wanted to mention about Janabeth's work, so important, and we're lucky to have it. And another Puppet Arts alumnus, Roland Dupre, has been working on Janabeth's estate and archives and stuff like that. I just want to mention, thinking of innovation, that this overhead projector was retrofitted with an LED light by Kevin Marinelli, who teaches math, and it was part of the Puppet Arts Mishpucha here. So, I just wanted to add that notice of that new innovation to this innovation that started in the 70s. And then we go heading over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Bart, I think we recognize a technique here in Jan Rosenthal's puppet.
Yes.
You want to talk about Albrecht?
In 1977, working with department head John Herr, we were able to bring Albrecht Roser, German marionettist, the finest marionettist in the world, to come and teach for a semester. And it was the first time that Albrecht had ever taught. Oh, you want me over there? Sorry. You're going to see me perching. I've got a bad knee.
It's for volume for the people online. Thank you.
It was the first time that Albrecht was teaching. Sorry, I can't stand in front of the projector. And he had only learned English a couple of months earlier. So it was a brand new situation for this master. He taught us a lot about string puppetry, but he also taught us to work in a form of sculpture that we refer to as paper sculpture. The idea is that you're working with cones and cylinders and one piece of paper. Okay, so you would sculpt in typing paper. Remember what typing paper was? And then once you had your sculpture, you would cut it apart and get a flat pattern that you could enlarge or reduce to any size. And this is a method that, that we worked with. This puppet is actually the result of Albrecht's class. Jan Rosenthal created this, Jan Rosenthal Stefura. Jan continued working in puppetry. She worked for the Hensons. A slight story, when the Muppet Show first went up and Miss Piggy started getting popular, Jan was in the shop in New York and had to bring Miss Piggy to the set in London, and the flight was delayed. So she landed an hour and a half before she knew the puppet was needed in the studio, and she had to go through customs. Well, Jan reached into the box, put Piggy on, held her in the air, and crowds started rushing to her from every direction, and the customs people said, "Get out of here!" Move. And she made it to the set on time. Jan went on to work for Fisher-Price. She designed a lot of toys, probably things that some of your kids have played with, and sadly she was taken from us through breast cancer. But her memory sticks with us, and her good spirit is very much part of the program still today. Next to this is a puppet by Brad Williams, who was in essence my compatriot, as we both came in at the same time into the program in 1975. Brad was a commercial artist, and he was introduced to performing in puppetry by Burr Tillstrom of the Kukla, Fran and Ollie reputation. Brad was in school in Michigan when Burr was invited in as a guest artist. Burr encouraged Brad to create a Punch and Judy show, and it sort of lit him on fire about puppetry. So we both sort of met up here to work together. Through our time here at the university, One of our frustrations was that we were only working on Frank Ballard shows. And again, they were great, but we weren't expressing ourselves. And so he and I and my wife Marge, who is way back over there, Jan Rosenthal, later Richard Termini, and then Rachel Prescott formed a company we called the Pandemonium Puppet Company to find a way to express our own ideas and to perform more frequently than once every year. Pandemonium existed for about 15 years, and we traveled throughout the Northeast doing lots of shows. Brad, while we were doing shows with Pandemonium, was hired by the beginning of what is now Warner Cable. They were testing ideas for cable television in Columbus, Ohio. They hired Brad to come in and start doing some work with them, but it happened that summer we had a contract with Jorgensen Theater, with the Summer Theater, the Nutmeg Summer Theater, to do a brand new show every week. I mean, we offered to do a brand new show every week, and we went about it. But Brad was also working in Columbus, Ohio, and he convinced the people from Warner to fly him back and forth so he could maintain both contracts. And we did 6 new shows that summer. He went on as Nickelodeon was formed and did a number of different programs. This one, this is from a show called Pinwheel, Ebenezer T. Squint. He also created smaller programs called Hocus Focus, where he played a wizard who did all sorts of things that were, in essence, puppetry. Brad was a major influence, and anyone who's a student now, his name is not new to you. He comes up in our classes all the time because Brad not only was a friend, but he was also a teacher for me. And it was a great situation to have somebody so close and so talented who could share with us. Brad also sadly was taken by a car accident a long time ago now, more than 20 years ago. But his influence is still part of the program. Matt, I turn it to you.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say one thing about the groupings for this exhibition. They're innovation, performance, fabrication, and education. All of these pieces are all of these things.
And they all overlap.
And they all overlap incredibly, just like all of the arts and sciences and puppetry are this melting pot of skills and knowledge and physics and artistry. Yeah, I like that. So we thought that most of these categories were mildly interchangeable, but we tried to focus on people's work past UConn graduation. So this innovative world that we've been standing in are all innovations from the time that these people were students. For instance, the overhead projection and the Albrecht's techniques are very innovative, and Brad's work was super innovative. He kind of kickstarted Nickelodeon as part of that. We all know Nickelodeon, right? Yeah, so Pinwheel, I grew up watching this, and it meant a lot to me, and then when I found out we had it here, I was really stoked. Innovation goes further over here, where we have some lovely stop motion puppets. Krista Weltner made this Edgar Allan Poe puppet down here, stop motion, and also we have this this is a test from Leica Studios by an alum named Maggie Flanagan. So it's a very big deal that we have property from Leica here, and we are grateful for them giving that to us. It's a huge deal. And then we're also innovating all the time in our work, right? So people are doing performance as well as innovating form. So this is kind of where we're melding into performance land. And we have here this gorgeous wooden marionette carved by Anatar. Hi, Anatar.
Here.
Hi.
Hi.
And this really, really awesome cardboard puppet slam performance piece by Esme Roselle and Ray Dondero. We've got the Unicorn Lawyer by Austin Costello, and these hand puppets by David Regan. All of these materials and techniques are things that we're continuing to explore and perform with and test the limits, and it's really exciting. This next piece over here, this is our dear friend Nappy. Many of you may have heard the monkeys jumping on the bed piece that he puts together. Anybody? Anybody?
Yes,
So
love it.
he made this lovely little, yes, he made this lovely little kind of peep show, Limba Limba inspired kind of piece, so you can enjoy the monkeys jumping on the bed all by your lonesome. And this next case, I gotta say, is a lot of really recognizable, potentially famous puppets, right? Have we seen any of these guys before? Yes. So this is where we're in the world of primarily like television puppetry and work with big companies and Broadway shows and Nickelodeon and Disney and all kinds of other stuff that our puppetry students go on to have these amazing jobs. 90% of the people that I've spoken with that have those kinds of jobs can't show any of their work necessarily because they're all under NDAs or it's somebody else's property and it's very strictly controlled by the corporations. So I'm really stoked that we managed to get all of these awesome pieces here. This blue here and Blue's friend Polka Dots, those are from Pam Arciero, who was a producer and a puppeteer on, is it Blue's House? No.
Blue's Room.
Blue's Room, thank you. Close. Trekkie Monster right here. I love Trekkie Monster. Jen Barnhart over in the corner was one of the performers with Rick Lyon on the original Broadway. I gotta say, Jen, I tell you this every time, this is the reason that I crossed from theater into puppetry. Aww. This is my jam, so thank you. We also have a really cool SpongeBob here, which was puppeteered by our dear friend John Cody, who's standing right here. And this was a web series that was kind of filmed during the pandemic, is that correct?
Yeah, we started filming it in the producer's living room, and then it ended up airing on TV, and it got bigger and bigger, and yay.
It's really exciting. So our friend Garrett at Nickelodeon, who this is his baby, was very kind about letting us display this in this exhibition. These three friends are Jack, Mary, and Mel from Jack's big music show, which is Spiffy Pictures, or David and his brother, I forget his brother's name. David and Adam Rudman. David was an alum of our program, and they also did Bunnytown together, amongst many other things, including Don Quixote, which is represented by this pink mouse, but Frankie Cordero built this Don Quixote mouse. Frankie is another alum of ours who says hi, and he'll be here in the fall. John Bell, tag, you're it. Go.
Okay. So, you know, we could have like 3 or 4 different exhibitions of UConn alumni work, so we couldn't fit everything in. But as I was saying, Sadie put together some images and videos, some more of this richness of work. So these are shows. Some on television, some live. Our friends Bonnie Hall and Jamie Keithline started a puppet company. This is another thing that people do. You start a puppet company. I'm in a puppet company. And they performed first in San Francisco and then in New England. They're now living in Vermont. They retired recently, but their puppet company, Crabgrass Puppet Theater, did, among other things, Mr. Punch's Christmas Carol, which is sort of a conglomeration of the Dickens story, and Punch and Judy with hand puppets. They're really quite wonderful performers who've performed here at the Ballard Institute. Then Heather Ash does really amazing work. Among other things, she's, besides her work in places like Sesame Street, she started a company with Jim Krupa, who's a puppeteer who specializes in mechanical operations. The company's called No Strings Productions, and they create videos for at-risk children in the developing world. And these two puppets, Buddy the dog and Antoinette, were for a series of videos for children in Haiti. The Wolf and Grandma are from another company started by John and Megan Reagan, who are a couple who came to, well, I think they came together here at UConn when they were both students. And they also are a New England touring company based in Massachusetts, and this is their version of Little Red Riding Hood, The Wolf and Grandma. Cactus Head Puppets is their company. Mark Blashford is a puppeteer who recently was living in Iceland and before that in Chicago, and he just moved back to the States. During COVID, he was doing a lot of work with the Chicago International Festival of Puppet Theater, which is quite amazing. And during COVID, he got this idea to do puppetgrams. So at that time when you can't go to a show, can't see live theater, if you wanted to wish somebody happy birthday, he would come with this tall box and I guess ring the doorbell to your house. You'd come to the door, he'd open the box, this little birthday cupcake would come out. Mark would set up this xylophone and the birthday cupcake would play Happy Birthday on the xylophone. Very safe, nobody was exchanging breath or anything like that. Then he moved to Reykjavik to work with a puppeteer named Bernd Ogrodnik and did an Icelandic version of the same thing with difficult to pronounce words for happy birthday here. So these are some very interesting puppets showing a lot of the variety of things that people are doing. Now, what next, Matt? Do you want to talk about the Luna Moth? The Charter Oak puppets? So this is a very interesting project over here. These rod puppets were the product of a project that Susan Tolis was involved and her partner Joyce Ritz, also David Reagan, Carol D'Agostino, Bob Ritz, and others. Roland Dupree directed it, and it was written by Robert Laughlin, who at the time was working at the Old State House in Hartford. And in the Old State House, there was it's kind of a 19th century museum of natural history and oddities, including stuffed animals like the ones you see here. And Robert, I guess, had the idea to recreate the famous story of the Charter Oak. Everybody knows the story of the Charter Oak in Connecticut history, right? Okay, thank you. So, but instead of performing it, as some puppet art students did a few weeks ago with hand puppets, they decided to have the animals who were in the Museum of Oddities come to life and perform the story of the Charter Oak as animals, like this tiger, Andros here. Andros was the representative of the King of England, if I'm not wrong. He's got a monocle there, so you can tell. And so this was very famous. It was performed at a puppet theater in the Old State House from 1998 through 2005. And I think this might be the production with the most, the concentration of UConn alumni. Does that seem right, Susan? Did I make up some things there that aren't true?
No, that was good.
Okay, great. And then Susan was also responsible for this Luna Moth that's hanging from here. It was for a production with a Hartford Ballet of...
It was the American Nutcracker,
The Nutcracker.
Produced in collaboration with the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation.
Yeah.
And it was a reimagined Nutcracker ballet, and so all the characters you saw, there were lots of different. Mother Ginger was a queen bee on a hive, and all the little bees came running out, and a giant spider puppet came down to catch them all, and there was lots of puppetry and really fun. We made a real bear, a big giant stuffed puppetry, I don't know, costume character bear that pulled the sleigh, that the prince and Claire, all those things. So it was super fun.
Yay, Hartford Ballet. Thank you, Susan. And now we move into the second gallery, into performance and fabrication. So, stepping over here in the northwest corner of the second gallery, as we say, we have on either side of this amazing presentation some masks. You can see the sort of influence of the paper sculpture that Bart was talking about. These are by Ali Buher Evans that she made in Ohio. And then these are These are screen masks by Roland Dupree, who we talked about earlier, and they were for a production of Marisol, directed by Leslie Weinberg, who is a puppet arts graduate who later was the costume supervisor at Wesleyan University. And of course, these are based on a Caribbean festival tradition influenced by German wire mask making traditions, but I digress. Here we have Toy Theater Peony Pavilion, which was created by my dear friend and colleague Stephen Kaplan and his wife Kwang Yu Fong, who are the principals of Chinese Theater Works, which is an amazing company, very active in New York City, and as you can see, combining some, for lack of a better word, say Western ideas about performance with Chinese, especially traditional theater like Peony Pavilion, which is one of the classic stories of Beijing opera and other forms of Chinese entertainment. And maybe you should talk briefly about this.
Yeah.
If you want, not to put you on the spot.
Okay. So, I've spent most of my career since graduating from UConn, bouncing between two companies. One with John Bell, Great Small Works, great, giant, and very small toy theater. And we, with my wife here, we've been doing stuff that's been kind of trying to bridge between Western and Eastern cultural practices, theater practices. So this project was sort of came out of that. For Kwang Yu's knew the opera, the Kongshu opera, and had loved it, and so we decided to miniaturize it. And this was done, I think it probably originally was performed at a Great Small Works Toy Theater Festival somewhere in the East Village, and then went on to greater glory from there. And you want to say something?
Yeah. One day when my mother and my father visited me from Taiwan, and we were in my uncle's place in New Jersey, and Stephen called. That time don't have a cell phone. Stephen called the land phone and said, hey, we got a citation from Winema. I said, what is Winema? What is citation? But I was really happy and honored, and then I become more into the community of puppet work in America. I become a board member of Winema. And this one that we're talking about, the Quinchu opera, the whole piece have 55 acts. So usually it takes 3 days to perform. And thanks for the toy theater, we shrink it down into 1 hour. And yeah, so that's the power of small. And instead of hundreds of opera performers, musicians, we only have 3 performers doing so many roles by the using of the puppets and the mask, and 3 musicians. The musician who just came to America, he said, that's not possible. But because of training of American experimental theater, we made it through.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think this piece for us was kind of a model for how you can use puppetry as a way of bridging between cultures. What could be more different than late 20th century American postmodernism and classic Chinese opera? And as a template for being able to do that, puppetry is really, and a tool for that, puppetry is really ideal. So, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Nice point.
Yeah. So I think we would next talk about Ancestral, which is a film that was made by Paul Spirito, who's right here, made right outside in the woods near the Puppet Arts program. And it also included now alumni Sarah Nolan and Krista Weltner. So I don't know if, yes, Bard?
Let me take an opportunity here to say that because we are the only graduate program in puppetry in the country, we are not necessarily looking for people with backgrounds in puppetry to come into the program. I modestly believe that puppetry is the center point of virtually every creative human endeavor. Everything, okay? Music, art, theater, of course, literature, physics, chemistry, biology, botany are all used in what we do. Paul came to us with an undergraduate degree in commercial engineering. Paul, is that correct?
Industrial design.
Industrial design, yes, thank you. And what we look for as we accept people into the graduate program is 1, creativity, and 2, passion. Okay? From there, we can teach puppetry. So Paul came in having no experience in puppetry whatsoever, but showed us some wonderful things, and we invited him in. He did his own MFA project, a great piece based on his grandfather's work, and then was hired by us to be our technical supervisor in the Puppet Arts program. This piece, Paul, I'm going to ask you to talk about ancestral, okay? Speak up.
I'm not sure what to say about it, but the School of Fine Arts gave me a grant. I think it was $6,000, and that allowed me to bring in a professional director of photography and editor. It was the same person, and so he worked with us, and it was a chance to get all the students out in the woods and perform puppets. It was sort of like anybody that's available, that's in between classes, would just come out in the woods and we'd shoot a scene. You know, it was a really fun thing for the students and me to sort of take a break from classes and things and just go in the woods and make something. And it turned out to be a really special experience. And I don't know if I know that John Cody is here, and he performed the lead role. Thank you, John, and did some voice acting. And I don't know if anybody else in this room was in it, but it was sort of like it was a fun challenge because there was almost no rehearsal. It was just we just went for it, and every scene, every character was performed by a different performer. So it was really kind of challenging in that way too.
And it was our first use of 3D printing.
Oh, goodness, that's true.
I'm thinking we might have to be economical with our spieling here, but this is a show called The Hoarding Show that Carol D'Agostino made with Carol, I'm sorry, right here, that Carol D'Agostino made with the collaboration of Janabeth and Sarah Frechette and Megan McInerney and Kaylee Clemens and Will Pike, Deb Hertzberg, who's right over there, and Richard Termini. So do you want to give us the
Yes, sure.
30-second, the 5-minute, the 3?
Hi, Facebook. So, as we know, the puppetry program isn't just puppets, it's also set design, costume design, theater, performance direction, voila. I did this a lot with scale models, paper scale models, which I learned in scenic design class and applied directly here. The puppet is a lot of Bart, it's a little Eric Bass, it's a little Queen Saturday from Mr. Rogers, and she's a rod puppet that stands up, and so there's a little bit of Eric Bass, a little bit of Jim Rose, a whole lot going on in there. And this is what I grew up in, and I made art. The end. Economical.
This giant figure here, well, just briefly mention, this is the Lady Liberty. It was created by Joe Therian, who graduated in 2017, lives in New York, and this was during the Occupy Wall Street movement, which he was involved with. And he and some friends, I guess there was a demonstration coming up in New York City, and they decided what would be better than to have a giant puppet of the Statue of Liberty. So as he says, as he describes it, they made it in one night, sort of throwing it together. And so it has that wonderful quality of being made overnight. And then it was used in demonstrations for Occupy Wall Street and afterwards. So Joe is part of a company called Box Cutter Collective that's very active in Brooklyn, doing other types of theater. So that's Lady Liberty. And over here, I guess we can move over here and to talk about Mary Nagler's giant Peruvian tortoise and Chinese crane. Now we're in the fabrication zone of things. And she made these puppets with students from Sonoma State University, which I'm thinking is, where's Sonoma? In Arizona? Northern California. It's in Northern California. It's not in the Southwest. It's in Northern California. And she made these with her students from Sonoma State University, stagecraft students. And I love these puppets because you look at them and there's the combination of materials, the design sense. I mean, I think these are really beautiful puppets. And then the technology here, the way these rods are put together, you know, it's just a really nicely designed and fabricated work of art. These puppets were for the magic flute, kind of like what Susan was describing earlier, a redefined version of that, set in, I want to say, dealing with endangered species who gather together when Prince Tamino plays his flute, and they all gather together, and this is a Chinese crane. So these Mary Nagler's work from Northern California. And this is Penny Benson's work, a reindeer from a show called Prancer that Amarillo Little Theater, which is in Texas, I believe, Amarillo Little Theater production of Prancer, about a girl who finds a deer and she thinks it's one of Santa's reindeer, and then the production ensues from there. And I think it's really interesting to think about, you know, when we're puppeteers, we think of the materials, the difference between the design of the tortoise and the crane there, and this deer, and how she's decided to make, Penny decided to make this with these very rough, or, you know, raw, natural materials. The bent wood and the burlap and this sort of raffia or straw here. Direct manipulation puppet, you know, you would hold the rods there. It's probably more, it's two people because there's the head rod right there. These puppets over here are by Jason Hines, and Jason is currently the artistic director of the Center for Puppetry Arts, which is the largest center of puppetry in the United States. Big museum, 3 different theaters, a big shop, and they're designing and building productions all the time. This is from a show called Tesla versus Edison, because, I mean, what I know about is, like, if I'm not misunderstanding, like, Tesla was interested in direct current and Edison wanted alternating current, and so conflict, as Aristotle says. And I didn't see the show. In the video, they're confronting each other. Sometimes they have a fight. I don't know. I think they started out working together in New Jersey. But these are direct manipulations, sort of Bunraku style puppets, but you can see in terms of design, they're sort of getting into a sort of early 20th century version of technology. It's a little sort of steampunk, in my opinion, a little bit, with these mechanical things that actually don't function, but they're theatrical. So this is really interesting work by
We have someone here that worked on the show, Jake.
Oh, sorry.
Sure, I can say a word?
Please.
They're really,
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I
No,
apologize.
not at all. Hey everyone, I'm Jake. I puppeteered Nikola Tesla.
Wow. Oh, great.
I want to say maybe 2022 we did the workshop version, 23 the full production. And yeah, these are sort of like the hero versions of each of these guys, but they appeared at various scales. And
Right.
one thing that's seeing this here, an anecdote that I think is kind of neat is, like, initially you can kind of see both of them only have one arm that's actually affixed to their body, and I have this great memory I think in the workshop version of, you know, there's 3 of us on each of these guys. You got 6 puppeteers up there. We're trying to navigate these sort of complicated interactions, and were really bumping into each other, and at one point I think Jason just straight up like marched on stage while we were working on a scene and just like snipped one of the arms off. I was like, okay, try it like that. And it changed everything, and we had this sort of beautiful floating arm. And the other thing I want to mention that was so incredible about these puppets is if you get a chance to like crane your neck around and peek through the back, the mechanism for manipulating the heads is something that I had never used in any other context. I'm pretty sure Jason invented this, and it's totally out of this world because you get really direct control of like every single different plane of movement, and so you get this like almost uncannily naturalistic, very, very human movement out of these guys. And it was this really beautiful show that balanced, like, on one hand, a really sort of human and direct approach to this real story of these people. Tesla worked for Edison initially, and he was this like sort of dreamy European like humanist, and Edison was this like brutal capitalist, like profit-minded guy. But then it also got totally magical and steampunk and out of this world, and by the end, like, you know, the race to electrify, you know, was represented by this sort of like anime-style mech battle where Tesla had his tube light and Edison had a light bulb, and they were like having a lightsaber fight, and then like he would come back in like a sort of robot version of his own body, and they had a big fight. And anyway, it was the coolest thing in the world. That's that.
I would like to point out that the mechanism inside the head is based on a Chinese mechanism that Jason learned how to do here.
Oh, interesting.
Can I say something about it? I also worked on the show. I'm not on the thing.
Whoa.
But Jason innovated this walking mechanism down here because he got tired of seeing puppeteers squatting and punching over. So he innovated this walking trigger mechanism so that the puppeteers could stand upright and look like people and not animals.
This is mine. Of course, he put his own puppet in the show. No, after I graduated, I got a lot of jobs fabricating. I consider myself a fabricator. It's kind of like my therapy, and those of you who are fabricators know about that. Also, shout out to Carol's hoarding piece in the corner for seeing our souls as puppeteers. So this is a show called Afterlife, A Ghost Story. It's a modern play. The first act is this couple, and they are preparing their beach home for an impending storm. You find out that they lost a child to the ocean. The storm comes early, end of Act 1. Act 2, this character appears as kind of a guide to whatever lies beyond for these characters. But the script calls for like a big blackbird puppet, and I thought objects that were debris from the storm would be a really lovely and evocative thing. There's a thing where the lost child appears as a preteen in the spirit world, and he's writing letters to his parents, and the actor who puppeteers this plays the mailman. So I threw some undelivered mail also in there to really get the heartstrings going. This next piece, this is Sarah Nolan's Edgar Allan Poe. Some of you who were in, was it Boston Puppet Slam 2 weeks ago, saw this being performed. This is a puppet for two puppeteers. They use their own live hands and control the head. This is from Barbara Pollitt. This is Philemon from Bossius and Philemon. Philemon and Bossis. And again, you see this lovely technique. What is this called, everybody? Paper sculpture. Yes, excellent. So this is a head-mounted puppet with rods that come out of the hands and like so.
Can I say more
Please,
about? Because I
please.
think Barbara Pollitt is just an amazing puppeteer and super essential to puppetry in the late 20th century. So she worked a lot with Stephen Kaplan in New York City in, I want to say, the 70s and 80s and 90s. A lot with Julie Taymor, especially on Julie's early work before Lion King, but also in Julie's puppet, heavy puppet intense Across the Universe. And also worked with Mabu Mines, which is one of the more important American theater companies, and that routinely got into puppet theater. So she got an Obie Award for performing, what's the name of the Dog and the Shaggy Dog animations? I forget. And then also with The Warrior Ant, which Stephen worked on. She also worked with George C. Wolfe, who was the second director of the Public Theater. And George was also a very important director with a lot of African-American authored work. And she made puppets for a lot of those shows. So she's just sort of in the middle of important New York City puppet theater work. Thank you.
So now we're transitioning into educational puppets, which I kind of classified as puppets that our alum went into schools and built with students and created class projects or original works that way. I got a call from Margarita Blush last year looking for a puppet builder. Anthony Salito Budney had just graduated. Yes, thank you. And Margarita got a Henson grant to work on an original production of Where Are You Going, Little Horse? And she also got a semester-long appointment at Skidmore College in Saratoga, New York, and they were all about this original production being created with them. So Anthony worked with designers in Bulgaria and created these puppets with the students at Skidmore College, which was one of my favorite things to do, is build puppets with students. This next piece requires no introduction. Bart Rockabert, do you want to talk about the Red Queen?
Well, she was created for an industrial show for State Farm Insurance. Tom Cariello, who was a contemporary of mine as a student, was very much involved in all the puppetry classes, but was also focusing on scene design. He graduated with a scene design MFA and went on to form his own company that started working with industry. This was at a time when the industry would create what we referred to as industrials, large shows to help their people feel better about being who they were. So this was a show for State Farm Insurance for State Farm Insurance employees. It was a $6 million production. I seriously underbid on this piece. But she performed twice in Chicago and twice in Las Vegas. And for this, hiring students, I designed her, and then Ulysses Jones and Megan McNerney helped me create the figures. And Ulysses, back over here.
Thank you.
You do it.
Okay, cool. So this next piece here is called The Nibbler, an original production that Stefano Brancato did with his students at
Marymount.
Marymount. Thank you very much. And it started as just the head, and each time it made contact with a character in the play, it would assimilate them, and then another piece of the puppet would appear. So the head, the torso, these funny little nubby legs, and then finally these long stilt-like arms that, you know, it wound up having 6 people behind it, and it was quite a mess from the pictures that I've seen. But again, this is another UConn Puppet Arts alum who is bringing puppetry to their students in the world, and it makes my heart sing. Speaking of which, Deb Hertzberg, where are you at? Come here and talk about your piece, please. If you want. I'm not putting you on the spot.
Oh, yeah.
Rock and roll.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Hertzberg. This is Ginu from Wolf Play. We did this at Brooklyn College, where I'm the costume shop supervisor and where I teach puppetry. I've been teaching puppetry for about 10 years now. I can't believe so much time has passed. But Ginu is a Korean child who is adopted by one American family, and then he's readopted by another American family. So the play is and it's called Wolf Play, and the Ginu sort of embodies this spirit of the wolf as a defense mechanism, right, for all of the trauma that he's experienced in his life. And, I was talking with the director about, how do we want to make this puppet be alive on stage? Do we want it realistic? Do we want it abstract? And so we sort of ended up somewhere in the middle. And she said, the character's a bit disposable. He's kind of like, a brown paper bag come to life. And so when she said that, I said, oh, okay, great. Now I got an idea. Bing, bam, boom. And, Bart said to me once when I was a student, Deb, you never make a puppet once. And during this process, I started sketching, and I'm like, this is not working for me. And I heard Bart's voice in my head, you never make a puppet once. So I started making like these little maquettes. And I made like 4 or 5 like quarter scale versions to try and work out like the body and the arms. And, we wanted to make him sort of feel, kind of like a doll. A doll has sort of like, a baby doll with like hardened limbs and a head, and then the squishy body, because the character gets carried and cradled, and he has to box, and he has to have temper tantrums on stage. So, I went through this process of making these tiny little figures that then led to like a couple of half-scale versions, and then I finally made a full-scale version until we finally figured out what was going to be like the best way that he can work on stage. But there he is. There's Ginu. There was Trudy asked, how does he move? And in the play, it's written that the actor playing the role of the wolf also puppeteers Ginu. And we don't learn that the character's name is Ginu until like halfway through the play, because he's mostly mute, and he's just sort of expressing through like this spirit of the wolf. And it was performed by one actor primarily, except in the sort of boxing moments where we had 2 performers helping to articulate him. Yeah.
Oh, that was spirited. Good job. So this next puppet here is a different kind of education. This was built by one puppeteer, my friend Noelle Williams, who graduated with me. We were a class of 2. It was very exciting. So she built this for the library. What's the library in Tennessee? Nashville Public Library's Wishing Chair Productions. Thank you, Tennessee. So this Lolly the Library book is actually a puppet that will be puppeteered when someone is reading a story, but also inside, you're not allowed to do this, but I am. There are different mechanisms in here to give it a moving mouth, and also this moves the blinking eye.
Ooh.
Noelle, I hope you're watching. No, she's not on social media, but somebody will show you. So this is used to work with children in the moment whilst reading to them, which I think is really lovely, and it's adorable. And that's all I have to say about Noelle. And this last piece I'm going to let John Bell talk about.
This is The Elevator. It's a show by Felicia Cooper. The show's called It Has Its Ups and Downs, and it's about a young woman whose life's ambition is to be an elevator operator. When Felicia was a student here, she was very much involved with like science and technology. She managed one of the maker spaces here at UConn, and I feel like she was like concerned about like girls and science and girls and engineering, and a lot of her work has been on that educational end of things. She now lives in Minneapolis, which is a very rich puppet culture in the Heart of the Beast Puppet Theater, and all sorts of other groups. So this it's almost like a Richard Foreman kind of object here. But the elevator goes up and down, and these 2 rod puppets here with the young girl who has confrontations with her boss, stuff like that. And what do we want to say? She's I don't know, her work, I find her work to be very interesting, but that's because Emily and I worked with her a good bit, and she's always been very dynamic. But I think it's very interesting that she has this sort of idea that her shows want to be educational as well as entertaining.
She's an example of alumni who is so involved in the Ballard Institute, being on our board.
That's right. She's on our. We invited her to be on our advisory board, and she kindly agreed. So
I
we're
also
very
wanted
lucky.
to point out our nice slideshows that we have
Yeah.
going. They feature over 80 UConn Puppet Arts alums, and the slideshow was put together by Sadie Aiken. Did you
Yeah.
already say that? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, it bears repeating.
Right. And there's one other thing we didn't mention, Johan. The motif, this arrow motif that we used here was something that our graphic designer from this previous year who just graduated, Johan, I don't know his last name, I'm sorry. Velez. Johan Velez. He gave us this motif and we loved it and ran with it. And it's giving us a movement, athletic shoe kind of vibe, and it's very exciting.
And thank you to our new graphic designer,
Yes,
Reagan,
thank you.
who did everything else.
Reagan
Moran.
Yeah.
Thank you, Reagan Moran, who
Yeah.
did all of the designing of the labels and the panels and the vinyl letters and all of the really great stuff that Emily and John and I and our great team got to throw up on the walls.
That's right, and I just want I appreciate your mentioning the student designers, because at the Ballard Institute, Emily's the only full-time employee. I'm actually half-time because my position is teaching in the Puppet Arts program, and then other than that, it's volunteers who help us and students who you just mentioned, and I tried to mention at the beginning of this talk. So we're very, very lucky to have such talented students, many of them Puppet Arts students, unsurprisingly, who are making this all happen. So this has been a very exciting tour, I think. I hope it hasn't been too long. It's included all sorts of wonderful cameo appearances by illustrious alumni. And there's more food, I believe, in the theater, so I hope you'll enjoy yourselves with that and talk with each other. And as I was saying, we hope you'll come back, tell your friends about this exhibition, and come to the summer performances that are going to start on Saturdays, and I think it's mid-July. Actually, with Anthony Salido, Budney, they're going to perform outdoors in the town square. And then, as we say, don't be a stranger. And thanks. I wanted to say, I didn't mention in the beginning that when we were putting this together, we were conferring with our exalted colleague, Dr. Matthew Isaac Cohen, and Matt Sorensen and Bart and Emily and myself. Did I forget anyone? Maybe not. Jungmin's Song is in there in the puppet world and at UConn too. So thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it. It's quite wonderful, and please hang around and